this off for far too long.
Bilbo, you are absolutely right. We did put the topic of firearms away for way too long. I guess I was a bit anxious to really talk about it, especially that I myself am not a firearm user, but it's definitely something we cannot neglect, and finally the time has come to talk about it. So guys, in today's episode I will do my best to cover all aspects of firearms in Project Zomboid Build 42, from weapon types, shooting mechanics, maintenance, and locations where to find firearms. And today, more than ever, I am counting on you guys in the comment section to fill in the gaps or mention things that I missed when making today's tutorial. So let's lock and load. Guns in Project Zomboid are a really complex topic, and I thought, where should I start today's video? And I figured I should probably start with weapon types, because we have essentially 3 or arguably 4 different weapon types. Starting with the very basic handguns, so your typical one-handed weapons like pistols and revolvers. I should probably mention that I am recording this without using any weapons mod. This is all pure vanilla, and that's what we'll be focusing on. The handguns is the most diverse category, 6 different weapon types. I have some examples here, the M9, which is the pistol we all start the game now with, and also as an example here, the Desert Eagle, probably the best pistol available. Now the difference between pistols and revolvers is that pistols require magazines to be used, which is fairly understandable. I think we all can imagine how it works, and every single pistol has its own magazine, so if you find an M9 without a magazine, you will not be able to fire the weapon. Of course, the other essential part of using firearms is actually having ammo, and weapons tend to have different types of ammo, right? You got the 9mm rounds for the M9, or you have the Magnum rounds for the Desert Eagle. For the revolvers, I have 2 examples, the M625 and the famous Magnum. There's also the M36, which I did not include. They all vary, of course, in terms of their characteristics. I will be mentioning weapon characteristics later. Revolvers, the other subcategory of firearms under the handgun umbrella. The main difference between pistol is obviously the fact that you do not need a magazine. Revolvers have a rotating drum where you put in the bullets and fire immediately. Now the downside here is that when you have a magazine, you can technically load up several magazines with bullets before you head into combat and simply replace the magazines, and with the revolver you will need to put in the bullets manually every single time you want to reload the weapon. The next category are the shotguns, probably the most forgiving weapon, at least at the very early stages of the game, but let's deep dive into them. Shotguns are the weapons with the highest amount of damage dealt by a single shot. Then again, the downside there is that they are only effective at short to medium ranges, they're not good at firing long range. But that's not why they were designed. They're still an excellent weapon to control the hordes. There are essentially just 2 models of shotguns, one being the JS2000, something very common, often found on police officers, and the other one, a bit more rare, is the double barrel. Now both of these also have their sawed-off versions, which is essentially the same type of weapon, but with the barrel being reduced in length in order to increase the pellet spread at short distances. Basically, it's more of a crowd control tool. Now the cool thing about shotguns is that they use only one specific type of ammo, and that is the shotgun shell, and it's probably one of the more frequently found types of ammo, so at least from this perspective you probably would not face a lot of issues using this particular weapon type. And finally, the last firearm category, the rifles. And here one could argue there are actually 2 separate types of rifles, one being the bolt-action rifle and the other being the automatic rifle. Rifles are essentially your long-range weapons, perfect for hunting, something I am terrible at, and also taking out targets at a distance, especially if you add extra scopes that extend your targeting range. The bolt-action rifles, the MSR series, either 700 or 788, these are Decent for hunting, they're not great for fighting zombies. Their chamber size is only 3 bullets, so you would need to reload them very frequently, and the firing speed is not super fast because you need to bolt action every single time in order to load the next bullet into the chamber. And the M14 and the M16 are a completely different beast actually. They both use magazines, and for the M14 you've got a magazine size of 20, and for the M16, which is an assault rifle, you've got a magazine size of 30. Now the difference between the M14 and the M16 is that the M14 is still a single fire weapon, so you need to pull the trigger every single time you want to actually shoot. And for the M16 you basically just spray bullets, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in those 90s movies. The downside here is while the MSR is fairly common, finding an M16 is really hard. It's probably like a katana of ranged weapons. So, good luck. Now what's cool about firearms is that they come with accessories that you can add in order to improve the weapon's performance, something you essentially cannot do with melee. Different accessories for different types of weapons. Let's have a look at what's available. Starting with choke tubes. Choke tubes are basically shotgun add-ons which you put at the very end of the barrel, and these basically increase the range and also reduce the spread. So they would turn your shotgun into a more effective mid-range weapon, but something that would not be spraying and hitting multiple targets. Then we've got 3 different kinds of weapon sights: the laser sight, the red dot sight, and also a tritium pistol sight. Now all of these basically increase the sight range, and with the laser sight as well, you will increase the weapon's accuracy. Now these would go with specific types of handguns or rifles, depending on the type of an add-on you want to use. It will only fit a certain type of a weapon. Next on the list are the scopes. There are 3 different types of scopes: the 2x, the 4x, and the 8x, and basically what they would do is they would increase the range at which your weapon is effective and is able to actually hit a target with more precision. And these are basically designed to go with rifles. You need a screwdriver to be able to add them to your weapon. However, the 2x scope can also be added to the shotguns and to the Magnum revolver. There's also a weapon gun light that you can attach to pistols, and it will serve as a flashlight. And there's also a thing called recoil pad, which does exactly what the name says. It reduces recoil, increasing the speed at which you are able to fire the next shot. It will also affect your accuracy, so the lower the recoil, the more concentrated the fire, and therefore higher precision and higher chance of dealing damage. Lastly, we've also got some cool clothing accessories which come with firearms. A holster is the obvious thing, right? A holster where you can holster your weapon, but there are also ammo bandoliers which you can put on yourself, and they will reduce the encumbrance of your ammo and also reduce the reload time. Okay, so I think that covers the essential items and equipment. But before we're gonna go and actually fire weapons, first we need to understand exactly how aiming and hitting mechanics work. With the introduction of Build 42, a new parameter called chance to damaged was introduced to the game and to the firing mechanic. How it works? In Build 41, whenever the bullet actually connected with the target, it would deal damage. Now in Build 42, it's not the case. We may visually see that the bullet did hit the target, but depending on the skill level, our condition, our mental state, the shot might actually not apply damage. And that essentially means that both our skill level, no-brainer, but also our mental and physical condition do matter when determining if our shots deal damage. High level of panic, lower chance of dealing damage. Hand injuries, lower chance of hitting. Now, it's up to you guys to decide if this makes sense or no. My take is, if I fire a weapon, it doesn't matter if I am doing that panicked or not. If the bullet hits the target, it should deal damage. But it's not for me to decide. That's the way that it was designed right now. We will see if this gets changed anytime in the future. Okay, so let's get properly dressed, grab some guns, grab some ammo, and try to see if these things are actually as good as people say they are, or am I right using melee weapons only? Okay, much better. Just a few disclaimers before we begin. First off, my skill level is basically 0, so we will be simulating a brand new character without any previous firearm experience. And I am also using two different cheats, God Mode and Invisibility, so that I can fire safely from different distances at the zomboids. Now you will notice that the weapon does not make any noise, and that's because of the invisibility turned on. We will turn it off later to simulate real weapon combat, so later in the video we will have the whole experience. Now I wanted to start with shotguns because that's the type of weapon I have probably the most experience with, and I also wanted to see if indeed it was nerfed to the level that people were complaining on the Reddit and other places. So shotguns goes first. Let's see if we're actually able to do any significant damage at those low skill levels. Started with the double barrel, but reloading every 2 shots is so annoying that I quickly switched to the JS2000, but even at close range, using supposedly the most powerful close quarters weapon, I was not able to take down those zomboids with a single shot, which was incredibly disappointing, I guess, and just made me realize that the skill level is actually incredibly important for firearms, especially with this chance to deal damage mechanic. We're gonna see that later when I bump my skills up a bit. I mean, decide for yourselves, guys, if this actually makes sense. We are what, 4-5 meters away from these zomboids, firing shotgun shells at them and not being able to one-shot them? I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. Now I've done similar tests with pistols, with rifles, with revolvers, and pretty much came down with exactly the same observations, and that is, okay, I can spray bullets at the targets, but I'm not actually doing significant damage, and using melee weapons would probably be much more efficient in these situations. Side note, the chamber capacity for the MSR type rifles of only 3 bullets is incredibly annoying, and I can imagine using it to hunt deer. But if I ever end up in a combat situation with a group of zomboids, I'm probably gonna throw it away so that I can run away faster, because I don't find this weapon to be efficient at all. Using the M14 on the other hand, and especially the M16, is tons of fun, and I'm not gonna lie, this is the first time I probably actually enjoyed firing weapons in the game, but still, at skill level of 0, I was doing barely any damage, so yes, it does have a fun component, but it's not efficient if you do not level up first. We're gonna talk about leveling up, aiming and reloading in the later section of this video, but first let's bump my character up to a solid level 6 and simulate real combat and see what is the difference, and you'll be surprised. As you can see, guys, level 6 for both aiming and reloading, so we're talking about a well-developed character, and we're gonna start with shotguns, still on the cheats, just to have a feeling, and soon we're gonna actually simulate the real combat, so brace yourselves. But already we can see that now we are actually managing to kill zomboids, most of them actually with one shot, and even at a not such a super close range, so the skill level plays a tremendous role in the effectiveness of using firearms. Okay, cheats are off, let the bullets fly. Reloading a 30 bullet magazine mid-combat is such an annoyance, so if you're able to have some spare mags filled with bullets before getting into a firefight, that's probably the way to go. If not, well, you're just gonna do it manually and it's gonna cost you some time. I found the M16 incredibly fun to use and actually super effective. I mean, the Zeds were dropping like flies, not all of them, but I was able to thin out these hordes fairly easily. But now let's switch to some other weapons. Even the M9, the starting pistol, was actually doing quite a decent job. It's definitely not a fight against the horde type of a weapon, but since you can holster it, you can always switch to it as a secondary weapon, especially if you have multiple clips prepared. This way you can pretty efficiently take out a lot of zomboids. But let's check out shotguns. This was the thing I wanted to test the most. As you can see, I am using the JS2000 at really close range, and basically it's pretty much one shot, one kill. I think one thing that I found a bit disappointing is I was hoping for more multiple kills on single shots. I don't know, I was expecting the shotgun to spray pellets into the general direction of the horde and potentially taking out 2, 3, maybe 4 Zeds at the same time. Now, let me know guys if you think that's what is to be expected and I was just unlucky, or you also think that it doesn't make so much sense. But in the end, it was actually a lot of fun. I'm starting to lose my bias towards guns. I think my next playthrough we're not taking the anti-gun activist trait. This is actually quite a lot of fun. Now the biggest beef that I do have with guns is that they make tons of noise and they will just attract more and more targets towards you, and when engaged in long-term combat you will start to tire out, you will potentially run out of ammo at some point. And if you're not careful, if you do not plan your engagements properly, well, you might end up the way I ended up while filming this clip, and yep, this is what happened. And despite John Rambo dying, which probably would never happen in the movies, but it happened here, I think I now understand why I was so biased against weapons in general. I always fired them at really low skill levels, and it apparently makes zero sense because you are super ineffective. So let's talk a little bit about how to level up your firearms skill, what are the traits that you can pick up early in the game that will improve this skill, and basically the best ways to speedrun these particular skills. The vanilla game has 2 separate occupations and 1 trait which has a direct impact on aiming, reloading, or both. If you're using the more traits mod, there are plenty more. However, speaking in vanilla, we only have the police officer and veteran as occupations, and the hunter, which is a trait. Gaining XP with aiming is definitely much harder than leveling up reloading because there are basically 2 ways of gaining that experience. First is, well, firing weapons, which will consume ammo and attract attention. There is also a specific tape that you can watch, a series called Dead Wrong. This will also give you some aiming experience, but not enough to be fully effective with weapons, as we are actually starting to be effective at skill level 4. Reloading is significantly easier because the only way to gain experience points with reloading is, well, basically by reloading weapons. So you can just sit down in your base or even your car and just unload and load bullets into weapons or magazines, and this way you will slowly grind this skill up to a higher level. Now, I'm not familiar with any special methods to speedrun these skills. If you guys know any, please share in the comments. I think the entire community, myself included, will be super appreciative of that. So use the comment section, please. I've been talking about firearms for almost 20 minutes at this point, and I still haven't touched the topic of weapon characteristics. So let's focus on this now. Now, the table you're seeing on screen right now is every single characteristic every single weapon does have assigned with its explanation. Now, these characteristics vary per every single weapon, and I'm gonna be honest, I was tempted to make a table which does a robust comparison of every single weapon inside a specific category, but then again, it's all already available on the Project Zomboid Wikipedia, so if you're interested in the differences between specific pistols, revolvers, shotguns, all you gotta do is just look up the information. It's already there and it's super easy to read. So I decided I'm not gonna be wasting your time in this video talking about these things. I'm just gonna post a link to the Wikipedia article where you can find this information. So where to find firearms, you might ask? Well, there are several different places you might look for them, and keep in mind that the game takes place in America and United States has a fairly high percentage of gun ownership, which makes it easier. Now, the types of weapons you can find in those given locations will vary. You're not likely to find an M16 in a residential house, you're far more likely to find it in a military base, but as a rule of thumb, you should target these 5 locations. And these locations are gun stores and hunting shops, police stations, hunting cabins, gun-carrying survivors and survivor houses, and also some military locations like bases and checkpoints. And while weapons spawning in rural areas and also the survivors' houses, these tend to be a bit random, For the gun stores, police stations, and all the military locations, these are fixed, and I'm sure you guys probably know very well where to find them, but if by any chance you don't, I do have a new ongoing series about all the different starting and non-starting locations in my masterclass, and you might want to check it out because I am covering things like locations of gun stores, police stations, and also the community adds tons of extra flavor into these episodes, sharing their insights and feedback on what to find where. So you might want to check those out. Okay, and there's one last thing I have to talk about before I let you go, guys, and that is firearm maintenance. And this one is a bit tricky because what maintenance skill does for melee weapons is represented for firearms through the aiming skill, which is not really common sense, but it's the way it is. So essentially it's the aiming skill that will reduce the chance of your weapon losing condition upon firing every single shot, and is also the prerequisite to perform any weapon repairs. Repairing weapons also differs from maintaining your melee weapons, because when we're talking about melee weapons, you usually need some sort of a material like a duct tape or some other types of tape to, put your bat back together. With firearms, you need a separate piece of firearm to perform the repair action. Just like in this example where I have two MSR 700s, one in a not mint condition, and if I right click on it and choose repair, I will be able to cannibalize the other MSR 700 to fix the broken one. Now you can see the prerequisite is aiming skill level 4 and a spare type of weapon. The idea here is that in order to repair one piece of weapon, you need to take out parts from another piece of weapon. Now once you do that, the condition of the repaired weapon will increase, but you will also salvage any weapon add-ons that were added to the weapon that was cannibalized. You will notice here that I do have some extra equipment now in my inventory. Now if it was up to me, I would probably consider adding some sort of an item called weapon part in order not to be forced to actually lose pieces of weaponry. They could make it super rare. They could also be attained through disassembling weapons, but not necessarily just using piece for piece mechanic. I think that's really shallow and potentially something for Indie Stone to really consider moving forward. Let me know guys what you think. Do you think there could be a decent rework done around weapons maintenance? I'm interested as always to get your opinions. And finally, the last thing I learned while making today's video about firearms is that you can actually perform drive-by shootings. All you need to do is just pull your window down and you are able to aim and fire through the open window, which I think is pretty exciting. I tried it with the M16 and yeah, it was a lot of fun. One note guys, driving is incredibly wonky when you do that, so it takes a bit of practice. All in all, I think I actually converted and started enjoying firearms in Project Zomboid, and to be honest guys, this would never happen without you, so thank you. Now if you're a member of my Discord community or you follow me on live streams, you know that I was anti-gun. Well, I'm no longer anti-gun, and the next playthroughs will definitely include some firearms. So that is actually everything that I've had prepared for you today, guys. I do understand this video is pretty long, but personally I hope I really managed to capture all the necessary details related to firearms. I am, however, still not super experienced in this particular area of Project Zomboid, so please, as always, respond in the comments, add context, and add extra knowledge in case I really missed anything. If you want to join my community, get in touch, stay up to date on what's coming up next on the channel, or just simply socialize and talk about all different kinds of stuff, my Discord is the place to be. The link is in the description of the video. I truly appreciate all the ongoing support you guys are showing me on a daily basis. If you like my content, I would appreciate if you drop a comment or leave a like under the video. It helps me reach wider audiences. And that's pretty much it for today, guys. As always, I'm Gertrix. Cheers!